Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 2 of India Energy Week here in Goa. My name is Javier Blas. I'm a energy and commodities columnist at Bloomberg Opinion, based in London. And it's my distinctive pleasure to moderate this morning a panel on the future of hydrogen and how to scale up the promise of green hydrogen. I'm very lucky this morning because I have a panel of the private sector, the people who need to deploy money and do the engineering, build the facilities, in some cases on the production side, in other cases in transportation, or as final consumers of the commodity. But it is going to be the initiative of the private sector what is going to be needed if we want to see the ambition, the hopes, the targets transform into actual tonnage and molecules of the commodity. So starting from my very far left, and no political indication whatsoever, I have Eric Vermeer of Char Industries. Closer to me, Nicolas Poirot of Liquide, Vineet Mittal of Avaada Group, Rahul Munjal from Head of Future Energy, and closer to me, Mr. Kanehana of Kawasaki Heavy Industries in Japan. Thank you so much for joining the panel this morning. I'm not going to go through their CVs. You have the app of Energy Week where you could read their detailed biography. Just suffice to say that all of them have decades of experience in the industry, in some cases running already projects and deploying capital and engineering ingenuity to try to make this ambition a reality. And let me start the conversation on that ambition and reality, because I'm a journalist effectively, and we tend to at times report the negative stories. Those are the ones that grab the headlines, unfortunately. And if I look at the headlines, and I was just doing a bit of research coming into Goa, a lot of the headlines have been negative of recent years. It's all about cancellation of projects, about slow progress. And I wanted to know from my panelists how much of this is just the expected growing pains of a new industry that takes time, or is an indication perhaps that there is a structural problem and that we were too ambitious with those targets and things are going to take it a bit more slowly. So, if Eric, if I can go to you and then perhaps we briefly join everyone else on that debate. When you see the sector today, what do you see? Do you see growing pains, or do you see structural problems and a need to scale back?
Well, since you said I'm a politician, I'll give you a political answer. It's a little bit of both. No, I would say firstly, no doubt the hype in the industry that we saw from a few years ago, that has substantially calmed down. But I think the reality is that calming down is reflecting a maturity in terms of how we see the projects being developed. So we are seeing now that people understand we're through the hype, and people are focusing on the things that get these projects to final investment decision. And a lot of the projects that were in development are, pilot projects. We often had very big, presentations from people making a few kilograms of hydrogen a day. Whereas now, the theme of this is also about getting to gigawatt scale hydrogen. And that means that process will naturally take longer. There's a lot more to get right in terms of the whole regulatory environment, the infrastructure that supports the projects, the scaling up that gets them to be bankable. So it's a longer incubation time period. So I think it's a necessary maturation in the market. And we are now seeing real people that are planning to spend billions getting involved supporting projects. And we'll get the next wave of investment coming soon.
Yeah, please.
Happy to add on that. First, a pleasure to be here again. I'm covering a wide part of this region, and I'm always happy between the ADIPEC and the Omanis and the other Energy Week, like Abu Dhabi recently, to always bring thoughts and to share and to listen to peers. Because I think the first thing we should all admit is that we should be humble. We should be realistically optimistic. as engineers, as business people, and that's the state of mind I'm today, you know. And here in India, where you are at the crossroad, like some other countries a few years ago, of the need of energy, but the need to do it with a climate-friendly path, but also the need to be competitive. I think some of us, whether in Europe, in Asia, in Japan, in China, in America, have been through that, learned lessons that we can use in India today. The need is the same in India. I see even faster solution in India on renewable power, different type of trajectory in India. And for a company like ours, Air Liquide, we are not an energy player, but we bring technology block that are essential. So whether it's ammonia cracking, it's CO2 capturing, whether it's, of course, hydrogen making. We are big producers of gray, blue, green hydrogen already, and we remain very pragmatic. We have seen probably less success in small passenger vehicle running on hydrogen mobility than probably planned a few years ago. But we see today more concrete, large examples after the hype is finished. And we are some of the pioneers of the Hydrogen Council, and you have the ex-chairman sitting here with us today from Kawasaki. That Hydrogen Council is still going very well because we are all more pragmatic. We are, I think, more global south open, to be honest, and that's very important to do. We are more competitive, and us, Air Liquide, our uniqueness is that we both have the technology pieces and the operation. We operate 5 megawatt, 20 megawatt electrolyzers for years. We are starting this year in France, the first 200 megawatt electrolyzer. So that's a PEM technology with Siemens Energy. Mostly, you know, thanks to a mix of regulation in Europe, subsidies in Europe, to be honest, and Total Energy as a partner for many projects in Europe. That's what's happening there. If we want to replicate in India, and we will, or like we did in China, there are many other ways to do. But I'm confident that with technology, with learning from each other and partnership, we can all do more.
Vineet, what is your take? Growing pains or structural problems?
So, like we used to participate in similar panel discussion across the world, and till few years back, the question was on technology. Is it electrolyzer going to be stable? Can you scale up to produce million ton per annum? Is human resources ready?
Yeah.
See, all of that is behind us. Today it is possible to produce round the clock green power competitively. India has proven that is the cheapest source of power in the country and across the world, and you can provide the fixed price solution. Electrolyzer as a technology is fairly matured, and it has become very, very cost competitive. And the skill set to set up large scale green ammonia plant or green methanol plant exists in many parts of the world. India is blessed that most of the top engineering firms have set up their offices and infrastructure here. So we have abundance of talent, abundance of sun, wind, water, which is needed to make it successful. And there is enough capital. The challenge in this sector is coming from the market creation. So if you look at India did amazingly well where our demand consolidator Solar Energy Corporation of India, they ran the tender, and it was almost 30 to 35% cheaper than what Germany did a year back. And now we are fairly competitive, and you are able to provide it fixed price green ammonia solutions for fertilizer sector at for 10 to 15 year at a fixed price, which takes the variability of gas away for gray ammonia. So I think the sector has tremendous potential even today. The challenge is on the demand creation and the regulation to ensure that the demand is robust and there is a clear visibility of demand till 2035 so that the whole sector can develop and mature. And this is exactly, we saw it in solar sector when we started way back in 2009. My company did power purchase agreement at 30 US cents, and we still run that project, and now the new projects which we are doing is less than 3 US cents. So in a 15 years window, The prices have fallen 1/10 because the demand creation and predictability of policy was there across the world, not just in India, but in China, Europe, US. And that's what is needed in this sector to take off in a decent way, and which is what is lacking today. Uh, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to try and not repeat a lot of the things which have already been said, but I want to make two big points here. One big point is over the years, in the last 2 or 3 years, there was a lot of euphoria without actually understanding either the technology or the economics. So they were the two big missing pieces. Today, as we speak, the technology is pretty much proven. The economics work. Now it's about long-term PPAs that the world needs to focus on. And so this is just one part. But at the same time, from a demand side, we must understand what's happened, especially in the last 1 year. The world has become geopolitically very, very charged. So energy security has become number one priority for everybody. So that's wherein green hydrogen, especially for countries like India, is extremely important, because if we make green hydrogen, we use wind, sun, which we have. And the more green hydrogen we make, the lesser fossil fuels or oil and gas we import. So for us, hydrogen is now green hydrogen. It's not, does it have to be a success? It's when will it be a success? And when I say success, I mean when will it be accepted in large quantities? And according to me, that time is coming. The time is here. So the importance of green hydrogen is more so today than it was ever there. And at the same time today, we have more, I would say, confidence in technology as well as the business model as we speak.
Thank you. That's very important point that we are going to debate later on the panel, but particularly the geopolitics, I find that fascinating.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Yoshinori Kanehana. I'm chairman of the board of Kawasaki Heavy Industries. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity today to be the panelist. And what your question is, hype. Yeah, exactly. Like 3 years ago, everybody is saying hydrogen. It's like a boom. But now it's coming down. And I think the real project is remaining. So I think this year is a real implementation of the project. Like the big one, NEOM in Saudi Arabia, they will start operation next year. And here in India, AM Green, I think they will start next year or year next. And they already have a off-taker, Uniper, German company, using ammonia. So Uniper will import 500,000 tons per annum from AM Green to Europe. So real project is remaining. And hydrogen can be made, as far as green is concerned, can be made in all over the world if the renewable energy is reasonably lower. Like Middle East, the lower solar energy, in India, solar energy, Australia, Chile, strong wind. But how to transport the hydrogen from country A to country B?
Yeah.
At the moment, ammonia, because ammonia is being handled 100 millions of tons per annum in all over the world. So they know how to handle ammonia. So they started the carrier, the ammonia. But as far as the carrier for the hydrogen is concerned, recently EU issued a technical report. What is the most efficient carrier to carry the hydrogen? It's a liquefied hydrogen. So we, as a Kawasaki, made a strategy 15 years ago. Let's make liquefied hydrogen supply chain by our company. Because we have a experience. More than 40 years ago, we built the large tank for the Tanegashima Island, which is a space rocket base. As you know, the fuel for the space rocket is liquefied hydrogen. So we know how to handle the liquefied hydrogen. Okay, let's make our strategy to establish the liquefied hydrogen supply chain. And 3 years ago, we completed the small ship called the Swiss Frontier. That ship can carry 75 tons of liquefied hydrogen. And we completed 3 round trips so far between Australia and Japan with a fully loaded liquefied hydrogen with this ship. And we built the receiving terminal in the city of Kobe, and we verified we can handle the liquefied hydrogen between the terminal and the ship using the very special vacuum insulated the pipe. So pilot scale, we completed the model. So now it's a stage of scale it up, and the Japanese government funded to our company, so-called the Green Innovation Fund. They prepare $1.5 billion. So we started construction near Tokyo. It's a big terminal that will have a 50,000 cubic meter, the large liquefied hydrogen tank with loading and unloading system, as well as we will start building this year the large ship that can carry 2,500 tons of liquefied hydrogen. And both ship and terminal will be completed by 2030, so that we can carry any country's green or blue hydrogen to any country.
One interesting comment I found from Mr. Mittal was that the technology is ready. We have now proven that the electrolyzers work. The companies are ready to invest. I just wonder, are the customers ready? Are they ready to commit to have long-term offtake agreements? Because I think that at times that's what is missing. So it will be interesting views on where are the customers?
So I think initially customers have to be created through regulatory policy. There is a greening target in EU, and EU came out with a target that they will do 20 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, which is almost 115 million tons of green ammonia and green methanol. If EU even implements 25% of that target by 2030, I see that global marketplace would be created, because they had the specific target to domestically produce within EU and import 50%. So those kind of policies were good. They came out with the CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. They put CBAM on fertilizers. So now if you look at the EU ETS price of 80 US dollar or 80 euro, then already with that carbon price, green ammonia is cheaper than grey ammonia in Europe. So it makes commercial sense. But because many times grey ammonia becomes so cheap that no one is willing to commit for 10 years or 15 years. And for any project to become bankable, you need to sign long-term energy contract if you need competitive energy. And banks are not comfortable with the short-term contract. So the issue is right now that the mandates which countries are giving, like even Korea or Japan, they have been talking a lot, but the amount of projects which they are outsourcing is very, very small. So the issue is that long-term contract, if they come, the ecosystem will gear up to deliver it. India did one 750,000 ton tender. It was very competitive. It discovered a very good price. And now in India, actually, the government also provides through Indian Institute of Science combustible engine, which runs on 100% methanol. So even if you look at it's why to talk only about green ammonia, now green methanol is a very viable solution where actually you can use even carbon dioxide from cement or thermal power industry and green them in that sense, and create green methanol which can be used for mobility and maybe say, for example, if 100% of trucking and buses move on to green methanol in India, there would be a demand of close to 30 million tons immediately. So there are various pathways in every countries. I think because of, as Rahul was saying earlier, vibrant geopolitics, I think focus has got diluted of global government on healthy living and living in a green world. And I think once that comes back, you will see the rush again.
Yeah. Mr. Poirot?
Well, I may add a personal view which is coming more from the fact that to us, the value of wanting to scale up and you want large projects, but you don't have large customers to commit on the long term. I mean, that's what happened with Qatar and LNG years ago, right? Japan took a long-term commitment and they initiated it, right? In hydrogen, we are looking for that. Our experience is that you have to go hybrid. So sometimes you have, and that's what we do in industry, we use our existing hydrogen customers. So it could be spatial for liquid hydrogen. It could be the semiconductors industry in Asia. It's obviously the refiners using today gray, mostly hydrogen to remove sulfur from fuel. So they are the first customers moving to blue hydrogen when regulation and cost allow. And at the same time, we try to make sure we have an ecosystem that hydrogen is a vector of energy, but not alone. So if you want to have only a filling station on the road for cars on hydrogen, it's difficult today. If you have a mixed fuel, yes, I think it flies. I cover many countries in Africa. Some countries just bet on exporting green hydrogen because they have sun and wind. And I can tell you, most of them failed because they didn't have first a business model at home, which is not the case in India. That's why I'm more optimistic. This is not the case in Morocco. In Morocco, they're importing gray ammonia today. They want to make green ammonia on site, so green hydrogen. That's the case for local industry. So when you have a local decarbonization, when you have a local need of energy like India, your exportation could be an upside. It could help you to make your project viable. But if you bet 100% on exportation, I think that's difficult today. And it's that mix that is happening. And at the same time, that's what we do in many countries. With our engineering team, we also go for other blocks. So capturing CO2, like I mentioned, we are doing real scale ammonia cracking today to test it. So when you have all those technologies at the same time, you start to move at the same time to convince the customers, I think.
Before we move to a bit of the geopolitics, on the back of that comment of Morocco, very interesting that a country that is importing wants to create homegrown hydrogen to create green ammonia, and then less imports of fossil fuels would have national security advantages and economic advantages, similar ideas in many other countries. But I think that the geopolitics is very interesting. But I wanted a question, Mr. Kanehana, on green and blue green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. So we were also mentioning them. How do you see that debate, and when do you see the cost? Do you see green hydrogen being able over time to elbow blue hydrogen? Do you see a coexistence of both?
You said the blue and the green.
Yeah.
And
the gray.
Gray, yes. Yeah, because this is my personal opinion. But the last year I visited Shanghai, and they are using gray, the massive scale. But using the cost-competitive gray hydrogen, they had a huge infrastructure to distribute the hydrogen. Then they're looking for move on to the blue or green. But if we wait until green comes lower, then we start the infrastructure. It's too late. So maybe start from gray. We expand the infrastructure, then move on to blue and green. And talking about blue and green, some special area like the Middle East, they have a massive the solar energy. It's very, very cost-competitive renewable energy. So maybe with the recent electrolyzer technology, they can produce green cheaper than blue. But if you look at all over the world, still blue is relatively cheaper compared to the green. So as I explained, we need the infrastructure. So use the blue hydrogen as a transition to establish the infrastructure. Then wait the green come down the price. And so I think a blue hydrogen is a transition, move on to the green. And of course, final target is green, probably.
Thank you. Mr. Munjal, you mentioned the geopolitics. I wanted to go there. Perhaps you could speak a bit more on two aspects of the geopolitics. One, the advantage that green hydrogen could have for a country when it's produced at home, but also as a businessman and business people in this panel, how do you navigate today's geopolitics? As a journalist, I almost dread looking at my email every morning on my Twitter and see what has been said overnight by a particular politician. And it's basically my fear is my day is going to be ruined. I was expecting to do some background reading and so on, and now I'm going to have to deal with this. But for you, your day can get ruined in much powerful ways. I mean, you are investing billions of dollars. Can be tariffs, can be war. And how do you deal with a new technology, a new industry in this very volatile geopolitical scenario of today's world?
Yeah. So to be absolutely frank, I think in terms of green hydrogen, the world might have lost almost a year, if not a little bit more, because everybody was waiting and watching. We knew America as a country is going to be on hold when it comes to either climate change or renewables or hydrogen or ammonia, methanol, or any of the derivatives, or it'll go slow in the next few years. But which way was Europe headed was a little bit difficult to assess in the beginning. But from what I've seen in the very, very recent past, when I say very recent, I'm talking about as of the last 2 months, especially with EU fuel and their other IMO coming in and see how Europe will react to it. Today, I think the confidence is coming back in the world saying that Euro is going to do what it needs to do and they are going to stick to their long-term plans regardless of what Americans do. So this is the new conviction that I think the world has. And that's why we've had kind of a rough start in the last year and a half. But I think going forward, I would put my money in projects which are done for Europe because I think there is full faith in that still. So
how is waking up in the morning these days?
I read some comment about dollar and yo-yo. I don't know if you read that already, but
it is quite something every day.
Yeah.
Mr. Vermeer, what we need from governments today, because they put very ambitious targets. In some geographies, and particularly Europe, we have significant subsidies too. But it seems that governments are zigzagging at times. What is from the business sector, with the private sector, what is the priority, what you would like to see from governments in terms of support to the industry?
Why do I get all the political questions? It really is around regulation.
Well, the reason is that you are on my extreme left, so you are representing the intervention of the government here.
Okay. And you on the right then?
I'm for free markets.
It's all around the regulatory certainty.
Yeah.
Obviously the changing of the rules, whether, as Chart Industries, we're a manufacturer of the critical equipment that goes into the supply chain. And even the places where we investing in factories that make the products that will be used to enable these hydrogen projects, we need the regulatory certainty around the infrastructure that we get to support the factories that we build. And that's no different for the things that make these long-term hydrogen projects bankable. I think we heard that the technology stack is maturing. So, we're at the next phase. We've gone beyond pilot. People are comfortable. The financiers are comfortable with the technology risk. So now it gets down to the regulatory certainty. And often the projects, now we're going, when you go to Giga-scale, it's beyond financing a project or producing the molecule. It's around the entire system that will lead to the product being supplied and then sold under long-term sales agreements to different markets. And a lot of that infrastructure support needs to be scalable. And no matter how you create the product or how you're going to distribute your product, whether it's as a liquid or a gaseous form or whatever that form is, you need that infrastructure. You need the power availability. I think India, with the investment that India's made in renewable energy, almost 200 gigawatts, has got a sustainable factor advantage now with that recently installed lower cost green energy. And that's a point that India could leverage. We've seen that with a project that we've recently been selected as the liquefaction partner on in Brazil. Our customer there is got a 600 ton per day project for green hydrogen, anchored in hydro energy, secured with long-term sales agreements to Europe, which have been made even pre, some of the more recent geopolitical dynamics that we've seen. So it's possible. I think some of the things happening in Europe, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, the scaling down of the tax on emissions, that's reducing. So there's certainty around that. And for projects to enter into long-term agreements that transcend what might happen, that's a commitment between now and 2034. CBAM goes to zero. A great chance for you to structure a deal with European buyers, knowing that the competitiveness of your product keeps improving every year, even though you've got learning scale benefits in your project, that by 2034, cost of grey is going to be high. So there's a lot of opportunities, but I think it's transcend that regulatory uncertainty and enter into long-term buyers who actually transcend the political dynamics of changes in whether you're right wing or left wing or anything else in between.
Thank you. Mr. Munjal.
Yeah. So your question was, what do we want from the government,
Yeah.
right? So I'll lay it out very simply, and I'll talk about from an India perspective.
Please.
So first and foremost, we need a long-term policy. We need to have visibility on what the policy will look like for the next 5, 6, 7 years. The plants will take about 4 or 5 years to come up, and then the business needs to carry on for another 25 years after that. So it's a 30-year window into the future that you want to look at. So you need policy, forward-looking policy is the number one thing. Number two is, in the beginning, supply chains will have to depend on other nations. India doesn't have today manufacturing for a lot of the supply chain that we need, electrolyzers, etc. So for the next few years, while India creates their own manufacturing base, we need to rely on other countries, and we need to be clear about that. That's the second thing we need. Same for battery storage, same for electrolyzers. The third thing we need is India has done something really well. We've got, because we have wind and solar, the round-the-clock cost of power in India through renewables is extremely low, as compared to some of the other countries where they have really good solar but maybe not as good wind. So round-the-clock cost probably goes higher. So that's what we've done very well. But in order to do these for our captive plants, we need very good wheeling and banking policies from the government, which are also forward-looking, which we know will not change. So these are the specific things we want from the government, and we need them forward-looking. So we know for the next 10, 15 years, we are able to deploy large sums of capital and see these projects through. Please.
Yeah, the government support is essential. And as far as Japan is concerned, they passed a law last year before, so-called Hydrogen Society Promotion Act. That will cover the price difference between hydrogen and fossil fuel for 15 years. So that, because hydrogen is a secondary energy, definitely more expensive compared to the fossil fuel. So we need that kind of support from the government. But the government cannot support forever. So I think the worldwide initiative is required for the pricing, the carbon pricing. And Europe will start CBAM this year, and Japan will start GX ETS this year. But we need to harmonize all the country all over the world need to penalize the CO2 so that the subsidiary will come down the price of the hydrogen, then penalty will go up. So we need this kind of balance. And then secondly, if we transport from country A to country B liquefied hydrogen, we need a regulation in worldwide. We need a regulation and a standard, the same one. So that needs to be, that cannot be done by one country. So we need a collaboration between all over the world.
So if I may add, but as a French and Parisian, I won't comment politics, if you may. I prefer to speak about football, maybe. Two things I've seen changing after 30 years in this industry related to your question. One, which is very concrete for us private companies, we spend much more efforts today to speak, to listen to governments, right? We didn't do it so much in the past. Energy company used to do it, not the whole industry. Today, all of us have to be very regularly in touch with governments, ministers, and vice versa. I think governments have to understand as well technology, fixed variable costs, those type of things. And that's what we do, and I'm very positive. I've used to come to India 25 years ago. I've been coming for years. The last few months, our intensity of discussion, and not formal discussion like in the past, real discussion between government people and private people has improved, I think. We try to understand better each other because they understand, they need to understand us, and we need to understand them. So that's the first point. So we need to educate ourselves also on understanding their constraints as government, society, and they need to understand industry constraints. Second point is back to the scale. It's always the same issue. We used to design plants, factories, refineries, steel mills to be big, to be at scale and competitive, right? The issue with that is if you design whatever is your business model to be efficient at full load in this volatile world that you mentioned, you have to be ready to be flexible, and you are not, because most of us want to run the plant at full productivity. And we learned that during COVID, all of us. We had to address, the campaign, the season, stop and go. So you need to be able to run more than 100% sometime, and you need to be able to be still competitive at 50%. So it's also something for us, designing the plant, running plants, and supply chain, which is super important. How do we adapt to more flexibility of the world? I could ask for stability, but that would just be a dream, So I'd rather try to address my design and a way of working.
Mr. Mittal, let's talk a bit about the specifics of India. What do you think about the targets that the country is setting for the future for hydrogen? Are they achievable? Are they too optimistic or too ambitious? And perhaps having ambitious targets is good because even if you don't meet them, well, you get to a very large number. How do you see it?
So if you look at India has come out with very ambitious target of 5 million tons per annum of green hydrogen, almost 30 million tons of green ammonia, green methanol equivalent. And to fulfill that target, they also came out with a lot of the subsidy for people to get kick-started, to provide the upfront capital support, as well as they came out with a tender where they signed the offtake agreement, long-term offtake agreement with a bankable entity. So, but that volume has been created for a smaller number. We need almost 10-20 times bigger. So India's challenge is not in its ability to make this green molecule, but for the market. And initially we need support. Almost 6 million tons of grey ammonia is imported. If we can initially substitute that, then it will create a very vibrant market. And second thing which India should insist more on, under COPS arrangement, Article 6.2 allows emerging country to give its carbon credit to the developed nations. So they have signed the contract with Japan on Article 6.2 carbon credit sharing. Yesterday they have formed a committee with EU for promoting green hydrogen trade. So these are all amazing steps. If these can be time bound, then we will see these targets to be met. Otherwise, it will be challenging to meet these targets by 2030.
What do you see as the biggest consumers home ground in India for the green hydrogen?
So it's ammonia, like fertilizer market is the low hanging fruit. Refinery uses is a low hanging fruit. City gas mixing is low hanging fruit. So if these three sector also government comes out with green hydrogen purchase obligation, then also the target can be met because the local demand can be created through the mandate, and because there is no robust carbon market today in India, there is no carbon penalty on fossil fuel uses. So if it can come in the form of mandate, I think it will help developers to help government to meet their targets.
Mr. Majul, you want to add anything there?
You know, the only problem right now is the world is facing a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
You know, and we can't ignore that. At the same time, India must create a large market of its own and then export. We cannot only rely on export. So it has to be a combination of maybe refiners, fertilizers in India, and then exporting ammonia and methanol to Europe and Japan.
Are the refiners interested?
Obviously not. Why would they be? You know, but the point is one has to look at the bigger picture, right? The cost of climate change in coming times will be far greater than the cost of refiners today. So if you look at the bigger picture, I think the country should be interested, the world should be interested, and we should try and mitigate that risk.
Okay. Please.
I think India has a large opportunity for consuming the ammonia because, as you know, in Japan, the power company JERA, they completed the test of coal-firing ammonia into the coal power plant. They mixed 20% of ammonia on 1,000 megawatt coal power plant. And India has a lot of brand new coal power plant. So opportunities, if they mix 20% of ammonia, coal fire, it's a large consumer of the ammonia thing.
Do you think that the coal companies, the coal power generators are interested here?
I'm not sure. In Japan, definitely.
You know, I keep
Sorry. It doesn't make too much of sense that you convert energy into ammonia and then supply to coal power plant. It makes perfect sense for Japan because they don't have abundance of sun and wind, and the cost structure there is not favorable. Whereas in India, electron should go as electron. Why to mix it with the thermal power plant? And the opportunity outside thermal power plant in city gas distribution, in refineries, in fertilizer, in steel industry itself is quite big. All the hard to abate sector, even for the cement sector, if the mandate comes out, I think India would far exceed its target.
Okay, that's a good point. I would like to ask all my panelists, and I'm going to beg you for brevity on your answer. You could just put it in one sentence. What has been the biggest lesson that you have learned over the last 5 years in the sector, in green hydrogen? What that sentence will be?
My view is don't anchor your project on government subsidies or incentives.
For me, the trap was probably the one size fits all. You have to be more pragmatic and diversified.
So for me, green hydrogen is new oil, and any technology which has a merit will always find economic sense eventually.
I think, firstly, green hydrogen is not a silver bullet. It is not the cure-all for everything, but it has a place, and it has a very, very huge solution to fill, and that's what we need to go after.
I think we need a complete balance from the subsidiary to find the off-taker. So we need a complete chain.
There was a comment that I thought was very relevant when you mentioned now, Mr. Munjal, on it may not be everything, but it has a place, it has a role. And I remember that in the debate a few years ago, many in the industry, we were talking about all of the above. We need all of the above answers to the problem. I think it's quite unfortunate that the debate in the last few months, perhaps a couple of years, has moved to not all of the above, but only the above that we like. And the above that we like is different in Europe, it's very different in the United States, and it keeps changing. And if I can ask a bit of a reflection from the panel on where we are, because if we have an energy and a climate policy that is all of the above, then I think that green hydrogen plays a role. But it seems now that we are really cherry picking, and governments are trying to decide what is going to win and what is not going to win. And different governments are doing very differently. And it must be very complex for the business sector to do it. But do you see that happening, that we have moved from all of the above to something else?
I'm going to repeat what I said. Sadly, the world that we live in, we need, cost of living is the crisis that we need to solve for right now. That's what on top of mind for every politician. So till that's the case, it's not all the above. And if that becomes today, tomorrow the world changes and the priorities shift, that your answer will be correct.
Okay, that's good to know, and that's why politically incisive, but politically enough correct. We don't get in trouble. I just been indicated that we are running out of time, and then there is a panel that is coming very shortly. So all what is left for me is asking you, the public, to join me in saying thank you to our panel today and for the great discussion. Thank you so much.